Initially, people were coming to help themselves or to learn how to help others. And now people are coming to us because they begin to remember what they were born to do, what they came here to do, because we chose to incarnate in the earth at a time of species extinction, climate change, huge transformation, the rise of AI. We selected, we wanted to be part of a new dream for the planet. And the minute we begin to remember that, when we were all gathered in a green field, a grassy field, and a big angel came out and said, "Hey, the planet needs you. It's in trouble. Who wants to go?" And we volunteered.
50 years ago, shamanic states were considered forms of psychosis, and studying them from a scientific or medical perspective was deemed career suicide. Now, a lot has changed between now and then. 50 years seems like a long time to us, but it's actually an eye blink when you realize just how old many of these practices are. We're talking tens of millennia. So, in this episode, I get to ask my teacher and one of my all time heroes, Dr. Alberto Villoldo, about his impressions of what has changed and what hasn't over the course of his career. We've seen, a lot of change in the outer world when it comes to magic and shamanism, but that inner call, that inward turn, well, that's the same as it ever was. Dr. Alberto Villoldo himself, thank you so very much for your time, sir.
Well, it's good to be with you, Gordon.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm not sure if you remember, but a few months ago on Mount Pachatusan, it was one of the mornings we were up on the mountain, and we're looking at the clouds playing with the top of the peak. And I asked you a question. I asked you, does it ever get old? Do you remember what you said?
And no, I don't.
You said, you laughed and you said, no, it gets young.
That's a good response. I like that. I like that.
Yeah. I've been dining off it since I got back. Going like he actually talks like that. He talks. It's just this off the cuff, this very clever way of playing with words. Isn't just in the writing. It's in the mouth as well. But I want to kind of riff off that idea a bit because it's does it get young? So you've been practicing in this work for a while now, and I guess I'm particularly interested in how the esteem and opinion of shamanism has changed since the beginning of that journey, the brain lab in the mid-20s to in your mid-20s to now. Like what was it like to start that journey versus what you see when you look out now?
That's a very good question, Gordon. Thank you for asking that, because the perception in the West has evolved tremendously. When I began in this field 50 years ago, a little bit longer even, um, the ecstatic states the shaman entered into were seen as psychosis. They were psychotic states. They were trances, and they were dancing, and they were twirling, and they were channeling mountains and the spirits of the dead, and they were seen as disease states. And then we began to understand. We started getting over our Western scientific narcissism to understand that these were ecstatic states, and they were experiences that we could not pigeonhole into our Western understanding of reality. And that's when it started getting interesting. But early on in my career, people would ask me, "Why do you want to study these Native American people, South Americans? They can't even read or write." And of course, there was never any writing in the Americas. It was an oral tradition. And so they were dismissive. And even today is kind of put into this new age category, when I think that one of the most hopeful signs that I see for humanity is the return of the shamanic medicine and the stewardship of the earth.
Yeah. Do you so here's an interesting question because you had one of the best possible PhD advisors I think anyone could ever have had in the form of Stanley Krypner. It's my understanding that you actually met him. I think you're an undergrad when you first met him.
Yeah, Stanley Krypner is an icon. He's part of the psychology, the history of psychology, and I met him when I was an undergraduate student. Went to a talk that he gave, and I was 18, 19 years old. And I asked him, I'm interested in the dreams because he was a dream telepathy researcher. He had the Maimonides Dream Laboratory in New York, a Maimonides Medical Center. And he said, look not only at their dreams, but what happens in their dream time. Because for them, it's not where you simply go rest, but it's where you go explore the multidimensional nature of reality. So that really kind of reset my sights. I went to visit him in New York at Maimonides Medical Center. And then I went to my graduate program at the University of California. And lo and behold, he was one of the faculty recently hired. And we began a lifelong friendship. We're still very close even to this day when he's in his mid 90s. And we ended up writing two books together on one of them called Realms of Healing, the other one Healing States, where I kind of brought the indigenous side and he brought the scientific dream and telepathy, parapsychology. Um, and it was so rich for me because
Yeah.
I was mentored really by one of the greats.
Absolutely. So, would you say there was something of an invisible college? Like, did you hatch a conspiracy at 18 or 19, like you and people like Dr. Krippner? Because I'm just so interested in the what would have been an incredible uphill journey at the time, and how even in academia the pH has changed so much, so that people who are looking at that kind of work today, it's still a bit of a challenge, but you aren't being actively warned off with threats to your career. And that's the bit that I'm very interested in, because if you meet this incredible man at 18 and 19, did you hatch a conspiracy then to be like, I'm going to see what I can do to bring some of this non-Western understanding to a Western framework?
Well, early on, I ran into what I thought at that time was discrimination because I was Hispanic. So here I was in California, and they said to me, you Mexicans are only good for working in the fields. And I said, but wait a minute, first I'm not Mexican, and second, I've got a master's degree already. So I butted into this kind of colonialistic attitude of academia that's discriminating against women, against the feminine traditions, including shamanism, and really towards anyone who's not in the mainstream. Um, so I had to butt up against that. Early on in my career, I was trying to prove them wrong.
Amazing. Yes, fair enough.
And it's impossible because to prove somebody wrong, you're suddenly in their arena that is just such a small playground. They're in the small sandbox. And I was
Absolutely.
I'm in the bigger one.
And that's real luminous warrior stuff, right? Like, I suppose there's a certain amount of energy, especially at a young stage in your life, to be like, no, I'm going to prove you wrong. But that energy should hopefully get you to an understanding of like, oh, I'm playing in the wrong game. I'm playing a finite game, and I should be playing an infinite one. And would that be fair?
Yeah, most of us start trying to prove our parents wrong. And then if we end up getting married too young, we start working on proving our partners wrong. Then eventually you end up realizing that you've just got to prove yourself wrong so that you can get out of this battling situation, because that's the modus operandi of this colonialistic academic, academic science today is still very male, very driven to the kind of experimentation that's gonna increase the Western body of distorted knowledge that we consider reality.
Yeah, I love it. To that end, when you were running the brain lab in your mid-20s, was there a particular moment that you can recall now where you're like, oh, uh, I think there's something for me over in this energy medicine thing. I think like energy medicine can influence brain chemistry. Was there like a moment or a paper or a realization where you're like, I'm going to look outside now? Or was it more an accumulation of all the different experiences and understandings you'd had to that point?
No, I had, the mentorship of Stanley Krypner, which is he taught me to look through the looking glass of science and understand the world that way, but also look at the inner journey, the what Carl Jung really pioneered as the inner journey. And then I had the opportunity to meet and work with another great sage, a man named Jonas Salk, who developed the Salk vaccine, the polio vaccine. And he contributed a chapter to a book that I edited many, many years ago, called Millennium Glimpses into the 21st Century. And so we were trying to anticipate what the next millennium would be like. And Jonas Salk said that we were like the lemmings that were about to run off the cliff to commit mass suicide. And that the greatest danger that we had was our mind running wild and untethered and creating psychosomatic disease. And I said, wow, this is amazing. This is what I was exposed to as a young man in Cuba from my nanny, who was a black African woman, who's saying, oh, the mind is what's going to kill you. The Western mind, you don't honor the ancestors, you don't commune with the spirit world, you don't recognize the invisible world. That makes you sick. So these two bits of wisdom coincided, and I began to look in our lab at what was the brain chemistry that was going on when we had blissful experiences, and we found that the brain was flooded in um, in the bliss molecules. So you had these neuropeptides and these molecules that create amazingly blissful experiences. And that became my kind of working hypothesis. If we can create bliss, will that create health? And then I
And what have you
realized
found, Doctor? Yeah, what have you found, Dr. Villoldo, several years later?
I couldn't research that in the laboratory. I had to go to the Amazon.
Amazing. Well, actually, that brings up another. So you've met so many of my heroes, Dr. Krypner, obviously, and one of them was actually we were on a call with Wade Davis a few years ago, and that was to do with Richard Evans Schultes, who is absolutely one of my heroes. And it's my understanding I got from that call that he played a part in your early Amazon journeys.
So did Wade comment on that?
Yeah, you guys, because Wade had just written his book on Schultes, and we were on a call as part of a psychedelic conference, I think. And you mentioned that it was Schultes who how did he shoulder tap you to send you on that particular quest?
Well, I'll tell you, Wade and I are good friends. We're both members of the Explorers Club in New York, which is a bunch of individuals who don't fit in any other club in the world. But but I went to see Schultes, and I said, look, I'm interested in studying the psychedelics, and I'm working in Mexico. I was working with Maria Sabina and psilocybin mushrooms. And he said, well, there are two unstudied psychedelics, which are the morning glory seeds. And he said, go research that, the Ipomea violacea and the Ribea corimbosa. Those are the scientific names of the morning glories that they're the beautiful blue-purple flowers that we see everywhere that contain the natural LSDs. And I began to, I started looking at the chemical side, the chemistry, but I said, well, even more interesting, we know the chemistry. What's the ceremonial use? How did it form part of the fabric of society in Mesoamerica and in early stages of Mesoamerica? Not the Aztecs, because the Aztecs were basically cannibals in many ways and practiced human sacrifice. But the early peoples, where they still had the abundant game, when the Valley of Mexico had now been totally exterminated from all the animals who were exterminated, the large game. And so they were no longer getting the precursors for the endogenous bliss molecules. They were not getting the tryptophan which we get today in 5-HTP and in certain foods. And if you look at the North Americans, the Pueblo Indians that raised turkeys were the sacred bird, rich in tryptophan. That's why we go to sleep after Thanksgiving meal. But tryptophan gets translated into bliss molecules, particularly into DMT, dimethyltryptamine, ayahuasca. So the minute that have you don't have access to the tryptophan rich foods, then you start practicing cannibalism and start eating your neighbors. This is not the teachings of Christ where he said, love thy neighbor. This is eat thy neighbor. And so I began to look at the historical context of these naturally occurring psychedelics, LSD, and found that they were in the iconography and the paintings and the art and abundantly used by the early peoples of the Valley of Mexico and Mesoamerica, and really throughout the Americas. There was this use of psychedelic substances primarily in a microdosing fashion. Because when you're microdosing, you're not kind of hitting your brain with a sledgehammer, you're teaching it to begin to manufacture its own psychedelics. So that's how Schultes came into the equation.
Amazing, amazing. It's funny you mentioned the microdosing because one of the areas, as far as I can tell, that's seen such a huge change in the esteem of indigenous practices and broadly speaking shamanism and so on is in the world of psychedelics. He's retired now, but my father was a psychiatrist. And at the beginning of my journey with this stuff, he had a very 20th century psychiatrist suspicion of psychedelics or really uh, any molecule that does more than one thing in the brain at one time. He was generally suspicious of. And I think about that journey from now to, if anything, a an imbalance in the other direction, perhaps. And the microdosing is very interesting because I know you've been experimenting with microdosing and even homeopathic doses of things like ayahuasca and so on. So if you could tell us more about that.
Well, yeah, we have to get a little bit into the brain chemistry to do that. The problem with the brain is that if it were so simple that we could understand it, we would be so simple that we couldn't. So and particularly in the effect of microdosing psychedelics. Now, all psychedelics act on serotonin receptors. And serotonin is a neurotransmitter. Serotonin is manufactured in your gut and it makes its way up to the brain. But before it can make its way up to the brain, its primary duty in your gut brain is for peristalsis, to keep the garbage moving out of your body. And then if because that's job number one, okay? You got to get rid of the garbage. If not, you drown in your own garbage. And this is what's happening to many of us who are not able to get garbage out from the cell through the liver to the GI tract and have enough serotonin to poop it out. But all of the psychedelics act on serotonin receptors. Serotonin repairs the brain. There's a class of medications called the SSRIs, which is a psychiatric medication that are the selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. It blocks the reabsorption of serotonin in the neuron, in the nerve cell, and that serotonin that's now abundant in the brain can go to the hippocampus, the learning center in the brain, and repair it. It repairs the hippocampus in 6 weeks. And when the hippocampus is damaged, like it is for most of us, we cannot put memory away into long-term storage. We cannot have a new experience. We can't fall in love again. So I remember my wife Marcella and I were in LA. We had just flown in from Chile and we went to one of the hip restaurants, but it was 6 in the evening, thinking maybe we'll run into Robert De Niro or Schwarzenegger or somebody. And there was nobody there except an old couple. And he turns to her and says, "Pass the salt." And, you know, what he was saying was, pass the salt, bitch, you ruined my life. You know? And this is a couple that had become, intimate enemies. And they were old. They've been together forever and they hated each other. That's because you cannot have a new experience of your partner if your hippocampus is damaged. And this is what serotonin does. It keeps repairing the hippocampus. The molecule there is called BDNF, brain-derived neurotropic factors, produced by serotonin, and including also the omega-3s will produce it, etc. So if there's enough serotonin to move the poop out, then you get some of it going up your vagus nerve into your brain. And there, the prime job is to get the hippocampus repaired so you can put memories away. And this is what I discovered in the Amazon, is that they knew how to protect the minds of the elders because they had no writing, and the wisdom of the village was stored in the minds of the elders. Imagine if their mind went bad with Alzheimer's and the village forgot how to make fire. So so that the longevity herbs and plants in the Amazon all had to do with increasing serotonin production in the brain, or many of them did. And then you could repair the hippocampus, fantastic. You can have a new experience of life. You can like yourself again. You can have an experience of health. And you could, rediscover your beloved that you've been married to for 40 years. So but serotonin continues. The story of serotonin continues. If there's enough to repair the hippocampus, then your pineal gland will begin to turn it into melatonin so you can sleep. And if you are getting enough sleep and you're not producing the stress molecules because your hippocampus is damaged, then the pineal will begin to take that serotonin, which is a tryptamine, and add a couple of methyl groups to it, and end up with dimethyltryptamine, DMT, which is ayahuasca. The brain produces it naturally. Now, the problem is that most of our drinking water is laced with fluoride. And fluoride basically will calcify your pineal gland so that you cannot have a mystical experience of communion and union, and therefore you are not able to have a transcendental mystical experience, and you live in fear because it's your old brain that's running the show, not your higher brain. You no longer have the bliss molecules, you only have the stress molecules, so you create disease. So that's the short version of the.
Yeah. It reminds me of something that you mentioned during the training, which of course I've done, where in the 90s, say, when you were training people on how to track, on how to actually be able to see things in the energy field. It only took a few days before people could get it, but you've noticed over the years, as the Western diet has not improved, that it becomes more and more challenging for people to get out of their own way when it comes to seeing that. Was there a moment, like I want to talk about that, but was there a moment when you're in the Amazon and realizing, oh, we're doing everything wrong? Do you know what I mean? Like, because it's all well and good to have gone in there to look for um, uh, drug origins for things like heart disease and diabetes, but then to actually have the realization of, like, that's too small a quest. It's so much bigger, and they've gone in this direction, and we've gone in that direction. Was there a moment of like, oh wow, there's quite a lot here that we have to do?
Yeah, that kind of epiphany comes after the fact. So that's not really a guiding light. That just kind of confirms that you were doing the wrong thing or the right thing. Mostly I got confirmation I was doing the wrong thing.
Yeah.
That I was focusing too small, too narrow. And a lot of it, the focus was on my own healing, on my own wounding. And then the understanding was that I could not heal myself until I took on the healing of the entire planet.
Just a simple thing like that.
Yeah, simple thing like that. That what I'm here to do is to bring a little bit more beauty and health to Mother Earth and to all beings, and then my own healing begins. So it's not just about me. If it's only about me, I'm going to be stuck in my wounds and repairing and trying to heal and trying to recover from my childhood or my ex and the rest of my life. It's a trick. It's a trap. All the self-help movement that we've been steeped in, I mean, a lot of it is very positive because it makes you aware that you need to heal, that you need to get over your being wounded. But if you spend 30 years doing that, you are in a dark hole. Yeah. And you're not going to be able to get out of it. There's nothing more boring than meeting a 50-year-old that's still working on their mommy daddy issues.
Well, so with that in mind, how do you still see that at the beginning or at this stage of your teaching journey versus at the beginning? Like, is there a change in why people come to this work and this path from when you began to now? Or is the story quite archetypal? It's like, well, I'm coming here to fix myself, but the plot twist is actually I have to widen out my field of focus to the whole cosmos or else I won't get out of it. Like, are there patterns or changes to what brought them to the work initially versus now, would you say?
Initially, people were coming to help themselves or to learn how to help others. And now people are coming to us because they begin to remember what they were born to do, what they came here to do. Because we chose to incarnate in the earth at a time of species extinction, climate change, huge transformation, the rise of AI. We selected, we wanted to be part of a new dream for the planet. And the minute we begin to remember that, when we were all gathered in a green field, a grassy field, and a big angel came out and said, "Hey, the planet needs you. It's in trouble. Who wants to go?" And we volunteered. That's when and we're more and more of us are not getting the call, but remembering in our dreams and our dream time, because we have a lot of support from the spirit world saying, "Hey, remember what you came here to do. Remember who you really are. Remember you're part of a spiritual community that is a community of luminous warriors that has been reincarnating together for millennia. We came here to help the planet and humanity come to this next level of a proper relationship that is going to be not just in the earth, but it's going to be intergalactic."
Absolutely. I was listening, obviously, to that excellent conversation you had with Andre Ducum the other month or several weeks ago. And one of the things you said there was that we are being guided now. Like, this is one of the moments, because I think it's interesting to consider the initial Pachacuti prophecy, which I'll have you describe in a minute, when that first appeared, so 50, 70 years ago, 60, let's say, um, to now. And it's funny, now no one would not believe it. Does that make sense? Like, everyone would say, yeah, that makes sense. We're sort of at the pointy end. If you want to tell me that 50 years ago, these incredible like wisdom and right holders who descended from the mountain and said, by the way, we've reached the moment where the cosmos is going to completely rearrange. That might have been a difficult sell in the mid 20th century with its confidence in modernism and the jet age and so on. But now I think more people are aware of it. Is that the process? Like, as we get closer to that moment, it wakes up more and more people because it becomes easier to feel?
It's the omega point. It's the omega point, and it's not that people are waking up. I said they're being shaken awake for health to begin with. The look at the the obesity and the health issues and the diabetes and the cancers and the dementias. When Wade and I were in the Amazon, and we were not together in the Amazon, but Wade Davis is one of my heroes and a good friend. Um, he and I are probably the only people that have spent that much time in the Amazon and come out alive. But we're being we're being shaken awake. We're being invited to be part of this transformation. And if you don't join the transformation, you don't thrive, you don't survive. Because it's gotten to that point of not the survival of the fittest, but of the wisest. And embodying that wisdom that has to be greater than me, greater than even this planetary existence that we have, then you're going to thrive. Then you're going to have the spiritual resources and the guidance and the support, and the medicine is going to work effectively with you.
That's yeah. So speaking of the guidance then, because one of the things that I think has attended the change in the esteem of magic and shamanism and these original practices is a resurgence finally in the in Jungian frameworks in the culture, because they became very unfashionable in academia in the late 20th century. Uh, but they're back, fortunately, and not a moment too soon. And so there are ideas like synchronicity are extremely popular in online discourse and so on. But what are some techniques for telling the difference between synchronicity and maybe following what they used to call on TikTok your delulu, following your own small imaginations around and around? Like how can we tell genuine divine guidance in the forms of synchronicity and so on in these moments?
Well, that's a really good question. The delusional headship. Most of the framework that I operate from is that 100% of the people I meet are delusional, and that are therefore projecting their internal map of that they learned when they were kids out into the world, and they call that reality. And that's delusional fundamentally, and is unchangeable. Very difficult to change those core beliefs that are the operating system. And if your operating system is founded on core beliefs that are so limiting, you can't run the new software that's being offered to us. That includes AI, that includes life extension, and that includes miraculous healing. And the minute that you begin to entertain that, then it begins to happen because of the plasticity of the not only of the brain, but of what we call hard reality. It's tremendously plastic. It molds itself to whatever belief structure you engage it through.
It seems like it's another trap, right? Because to step into your co-creative capacity, the first step has to be a little bit delusional. The first step has to be like, oh, it turns out I'm God, like step one. And then step two is, oh, it turns out I might be God, but I'm wrong about everything, and so is everyone else. Like you almost need the the fool's journey begins with the fool, right? Like the zero card for the tarot. You just have to be deeply naive for step one to open up to it. It's a until you do it, it's very challenging to describe or articulate, I think.
Yeah, but life is full of synchronicities. It's full of synchronicities, and you sometimes, like I was visiting some friends yesterday, and we went to a concert. It was an outdoor concert and dance performance, and a young man came to me with his partner and said, we've been to one of your talks. We really loved it, and I'm really trying to get ready to step into my calling and into this path." And I said to him, this society is really invested in keeping you asleep and paralyzed and a victim and disempowered. And so don't wait too long, and not wait until the time is right. Make the time right. And his partner, the woman, of course, got it immediately. He said, "Yes, honey, stop stalling and stop fooling yourself. Stop affirming a reality that is going to kill you. It just has the promise of, but not the fulfillment of." And this is what we've been sold by government, by advertising, by corporations, by consumerism, and you don't need to, shave your head and give away everything you own. You need to shave your mind and not be attached to everything that owes you. So, and the time is critically right now. And when we don't do it right now, the stakes are so high that you're selecting extermination. You will be biology will exterminate you. Will do away with you because you're not part of the solution anymore. And the way that looks like is dementia, Alzheimer's, heart disease. And because when I was in the Amazon 50 years ago, and I was funded by Big Pharma to try to help them find the next herbal miracle, there was no dementia, zero Alzheimer's, no Parkinson's, no heart disease, zero, and zero cancer. So but today the statistics are if you get to be 85, and you will live to be 85, one out of two people will have diagnosable Alzheimer's. So this is the game that we're playing right now. It's a very high stakes game, and you can't wait until the conditions are right for you to say yes to you becoming part of the new human that's being born today.
Absolutely. So what is that? If people are hearing that and they're feeling like, oh no, is there a method of sense checking that feeling, or is it actually just as you describe? And you always say this, right? And it's true. If you're not part of the experiment, you're part of the control group, and this is not a control group to be part of.
Not a good control group. No, absolutely not. It generally begins with, the way the wounded healer begins with a calling to heal yourself. But it can't stop there. Can't stop at getting better or doing all the research about peptides that are going to help you live forever. You got to take on the big challenge, which is to become Homo luminous, to take a quantum evolutionary leap today, not just to not get sick or heal more rapidly, but to become this magical being that we all have the potential for with extraordinary powers. What divine medicine is what the shamans call it. My friend Joe Dispenza calls this the superpowers. But no, it's the divine medicine that lets you understand what we're here to do, which is big. It's much bigger than we ever dreamt of.
Yeah. Was there a moment in your journey where, um, I guess, encountering those rites and the prophecy, but was there a moment in your journey where you're like, oh wow, this is bigger. This is bigger than. This is a healing moment for the cosmos, I suppose. And I guess my question above that as well, because I want to know if you have a memory of where that event happened, is why is it like this? Does the cosmos have like a yuga model, and this is just what things are like during a Kali Yuga? Like, why is our lived physical experience, or waking experience is better, so antithetical to like the medicine that we need, and the medicine the cosmos needs? Like, what is the frame of understanding that?
I think that there are multiple frames for understanding that. Multiple points of reference. You need to triangulate. If you only use one of those points of reference, it's hard to get the bigger picture. But if you can triangulate with two or three of them, one of them is the extinction event that we're living in. The fifth extinction event since the dawn of life in the planet began 10 years ago, 10, 15 years ago. And this is what most of the shamanic prophecies speak about. The other one is the convergence with creating a super intelligent being that's appearing in the planet this year or next. And this is, and what part do we play when this has happened in the future? Sorry, when this has occurred in the past, when these leaps in intelligence happened, it was always a symbiotic happening. Mitochondria. Suddenly, the eukaryotic cell, the cell absorbs mitochondria, and mitochondria, your energy factories, are basically bacteria. They have 38 genes, not 24,000 like we do. So there's a symbiotic process. So are we going to have a symbiotic process with mechanical intelligence, or maybe a symbiotic process with kind of a galactic cosmic intelligence?
Mm.
That's not necessarily silicon based, or both, who knows? So that's the second point. The third one is the scary point of the decline in the quality of human health and of the ability of the species to continue forward. Because if you look at the sperm counts in men in the last 50 years, they've dropped by 60%. We're not able to have babies anymore, except Elon Musk, but
Yeah,
nobody else.
apparently. Yeah.
And the sperm motility, because sperm is very sensitive to toxins, to environmental toxins and microplastics. So that and, the projections are that in 300 years from now, the population of the planet is going to be 1/20th what it is now, human population. So there are many multiple conversion points, but if you find three of them that you can kind of calibrate your life to, then you understand what the solution is and how you approach it.
Is there like so it's very Gnostic in a way to say, okay, well, there are like I would say a shamanic version, follow me on this, good Lord, is a shamanic version of a Gnostic frame is that the forces that are seeking to promote ill health and despair and so on are actually playing like the cosmic ecosystemic function of providing the conditions have changed so that we actually do have the invitation to become homoluminous. I think that's what I'm looking for is like, why is reality structured this way? Like, why isn't it a beautiful garden the whole time? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that even to go back to those companies that are profiting from disease, that many of the supplement companies, most of the big supplement companies, the vitamin companies, they've been bought out by big pharma.
Yeah.
It's because it's the same business model. Take two of these in the morning, take two of these in the evening. And at the same time, we have so many invitations from the invisible world. During extinction events, the doorways between the upper and lower worlds are blasted right open. And we're in the company of Buddhas and angels and demons. So it's who do you want to invite to have tea with you? Where do you sit? Um, who do you commune with? Who,
I'm
and when we don't have access to the bliss molecules, when we have to go to the Amazon to take a bunch of ayahuasca, and we have communion with the divine, but 2 days later, by Tuesday, we forgot what we did. So this is the dilemma that we're in right now. That's why the microdosing, I think, is so much more valuable. Even the homeopathic, getting the precursors to the tryptamines, the 5-HTP, the tryptophan, that you don't have in your food anymore, so that you can begin to manufacture these bliss molecules so you can have communion and dialogue and conversations with God. God hasn't stopped talking to us. We've just stopped listening.
absolutely. This is it's a really actually beautiful thought to close out the conversation on that during serious times such as this, the doors between the upper world and our world are blown wide open, and we can step into being able to hear that and respond to it by adjusting our health, adjusting the supports that we need to do it, and be able to heed that calling. It kind of puts a nice bow on everything. And I wouldn't even bring it back to Maria Sabina, right? Because from her poem, "Always remember you are the medicine." Like we're the ones that can hear that.
Yeah. As you know, what I do is I train modern shamans, and when I sign my correspondence, I sign as a neuro shaman. Because we're not indigenous people. We're the new shamans. We're the new caretakers of the earth. And it's amazing what happens and what I do is I train modern shamans, like you did our training as well. You are a modern shaman. So you're a bridge between the visible and the invisible. But it's interesting when you don't say yes fully, when you don't fully say yes to the invitation, then you still keep the fear circuits running in your brain. And then you get a diagnosis. And then when you get a diagnosis and the doctor say, we got to go into surgery tomorrow. We got to see if there's an operating room available. You got to start this treatment right away. It's like fear-based thinking. You go, I've had this for 20 years and I got to go to surgery tomorrow. So all of the fear circuits get triggered again, and we have to disable those circuits. They're ancient fear circuits in our limbic brain that evolved when we, 10 million years ago and helped us survive an ice age, but we don't need them anymore. We need them to stop supporting the fear response, the fight or flight response, because it's not fight or flight, it's fight, flight, freeze, please. And the last two is where you start getting into real trouble. America is frozen today. The world, we're frozen. We can't make a difference anymore. We feel incapable of changing the status quo. Well, that's where we become good consumers. And then we forget that we are living miracles. There were Buddhas in the making. We're attaining shamanhood.
Beautiful, beautiful. And as the seeming option, this is speaking of Joe Dispenza and the idea of matter changing matter being hard or difficult. As the physical options seem more and more reduced, listen even stronger to that call to like, oh well, I'm gonna come at this at the level of the field and be miraculous that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then you can do it at the level of the biology too. The biology. And of the physical reality that we're dancing with and interacting with all the time. See, we came here to dream the world into being, to dream beauty, to dream health, to dream the world into being with spirit, to co-create, and not simply just fix and adjust and trim. But no, you cannot fix the system. It's broken. Let's dream it newly, including our psychologies, including our healthcare systems, including our, with all of the medical discoveries we've had in the last 10 years, people are getting sicker than they've ever been. So let's say yes to that invitation, become the new human, and become driven by the possible and not by the probable anymore.
A beautiful final thought to finish this conversation, Dr. Villoldo. I think that is an invitation we should all pick up from. And tell people in the extremely unlikely event, particularly if they listen to my show, that they don't know how to get a hold of you or find out what you got going on. Where can people find you and what you
Well,
have
I
happened?
would suggest beginning with my most recent book, which is Grow a New Brain. How to grow a new brain. We grow a new brain every 22 days, and you need to change your brain to change your mind. But if you can post our website, the4winds.com, this is where people can look at our classes, the courses we offer. And so many of us are trying to grow bigger. We want to get bigger. We want to reach a bigger audience. Right now, my interest in growing smaller.
Beautiful.
More boutique. I want to grow smaller. I want to work with the people that have said yes to their calling, not that are shopping.
Yeah,
Shopping is important. Window shopping is great. But
that's very wise. I understand correctly. I understand exactly what you mean. So, and you're certainly doing an incredible job of it. Like I said, we had the most amazing time on the mountain on Pachatusa, and that's just a splendid place that I still think about. I'm still very good friends with the people that I met on the mountain. So amazing times there.
beautiful, Gordon. Thank you so much for having me on your show. Blessings. Thank you for the beautiful work you do.
I beg your indulgence with this one. I've obviously been following Don Alberto's work for quite a while. And this was my first opportunity to ask him some questions that, like I personally wanted to know. Now, typically with interview episodes, I do my best to formulate and frame questions for what I think would be best for you guys. But actually, Alberto, and I mentioned this in the show, was on Andre Ducum's podcast recently, and it was one of his best performances in years. The questions matched his energy. It was excellent, right? And so I'll link that up below if you're interested in getting an overview of Alberto's cosmos, and you can consume that in your own time. I'm happy we got to discuss. No, hang on. I'm happy we got to discuss the changes in shamanism over time because, I mean, I know it's not the most popular topic with the core audience of this channel, which is more interested inevitably in, Western magic, Western so-called. But magic and shamanism have both followed not identical, but a similar journey from derision to, well, I don't want to say celebration, but at least wider acceptance. So I hope you enjoyed this discussion and got as much out of it as I did. See you in the next one.